Um, okay, so this is we have like skipped a couple weeks in between reading this, I believe, but this was a fic that we read in which Martha and Jonathan Kent are
Hmm.
raising their son Clark, who is a normal child for all intents and purposes, except for the bit where he was an alien that crash landed from space. And
Yeah, you know.
um we have read like three little sections of this so far. We got about halfway through, and all of them have begun with the first time a man from the future showed up at Martha Kent's house. Clark Kent was X years old, and at the end of every single event, something happens, and it basically unwrites itself from history because Martha figures out some way to stop it from happening and then
Yeah,
forgets it happened. And it's a very
yeah.
interesting setup for a fic, and we read the first few, and it was really good. This fic is like, I think I went on a rant before, but like the last time we read this, I said that this is like the only DCU fic I keep up with because I like this person's opinions, and
Mm.
they've been writing it since like 2015. I think I've been following it since 2015 or 2016. So yeah, there's a bunch of, I'll scroll up to the top when we're done with this. I will lose my place, but there's a bunch of different little sections in the fic, and
Yeah.
or sorry, there's a bunch of little fics in this series that run from Martha and fuck, what the fuck was this?
Jonathan Kent.
No, the Waynes, the other
Oh, the Waynes.
Thomas.
Martha and Thomas Wayne.
Martha and Thomas Wayne meeting and getting together and having Bruce. And it's mostly Bruce centric. It was no. It's mostly it's Batman and Superman centric. I'm not gonna lie. It starts at the beginning. It starts like pre Batman and Superman and ends with like the current Robins and sidekicks memeing. So enjoy all of that. There's like 50 something fics of this series. It is badass, JoJo.
It is quite good. Yeah. Also, I really like Martha Kent in this.
I do really like Martha Kent in this. Also, Tin Kelp says one thing I'd like to bring up. I think instead of meow for no, you could say meow, meow. Also, a noise a cat makes, but easier to roll off the tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah, thinking of new interesting ways to do cat puns, I think is good because you can improve on what Andrew Hussey was doing. In I think that's just as a general rule. Anyone can improve on what Andrew Hussey was doing. You should know that.
Oh, the typing quirk converter isn't smart enough to recognize that the now is part of the no. It thinks it's now, so it's converting it to meow. I get it. Yeah,
Oh,
but it's too stupid to realize that it's part of a bigger word and probably shouldn't convert it.
excellent.
Nice.
Okay.
All
Uh,
right, cool.
all right. This
All right.
is Empty Graves by Unpretty, Part 2.
All right, let me know when you're ready, and I will kick it off with the narrator.
I'm gonna have a little bit of honey real quickly, actually.
Yeah, that's probably a good call. Also, this is Martha Kent taking care of young Superman, so Clark Kent at various ages, raising the child. And I don't know if you can make an exception to that. Maybe. I don't know what typing quirk converter you use, but
Okay. I'm good.
alrighty.
Were you narrating or was I narrating?
You asked me to narrate, but I was waiting for you to be ready.
Oh,
You said
okay.
you were getting honey.
Sorry, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
ready.
no worries. The first time a man from the future showed up at Martha Kent's house, Clark Kent was 7 years old. This one was young. He was haggard. He was thin. He looked so very, very tired. That didn't stop Martha from leveling her shotgun at him.
Please.
He pleaded.
You don't understand.
He declare himself king or something? She asked, and it was so difficult to keep her heart hard. This was a boy, just like so many boys she'd known. He was begging, and she was the one holding the gun. She refused to think of any boy but her son.
No, he's just. He's perfect. He's perfection incarnate.
Sounds real unfortunate.
He sets this standard, this amazing standard. He says if we just tried, we could be like him. We could be strong like him. We could be perfect like him. All these problems would go away if we just worked for the greater good and people listen. It's so hard not to listen. He says he's making a better world, but there's no room in it for people like us. See, maybe it isn't even his fault. Maybe he doesn't even mean it like that, but we can't help it, can we? People, I mean, human beings, we can't handle it knowing perfect exists. I'm sure you love your son, but he's not human.
She shot him. She didn't want to shoot him, but she told herself it was a mercy. A miserable boy from a miserable future that never should have been. She stared down at the body, blood and brain and bone. She didn't know it, but it was getting easier. Can't say I care for this as much at all, she said to no one. Muscle memory she didn't know she had. Things that had never happened, burying the boy behind the barn. And when she was done, she cried. Cried as she burned her clothes and cried in the shower. All she wanted, all she ever wanted, was for her to be safe. There were so many sons. Don't take your coat off, she told Clark when he came home. She was pulling on her coat, grabbing her boots.
Where are we going?
He asked, setting down his backpack.
Should I bring a book?
If you want, she said. Don't know if you'll be reading it much. You know that Brady family down by the way? Got a kid goes to your school? Clark made a face.
Tristan? He takes the short bus.
Your school's not big enough to have a separate bus, she said, and she was angry, so angry. Not at Clark, but at the world that made little boys into men and lied about what it meant to be great. At herself for not seeing the trouble her husband must have been having relating to a little boy Clark's age. Jonathan tried so hard to be a role model, but he didn't know what it was like to be a son. He didn't trust himself not to steer Clark wrong. Martha didn't know what it was like to be a son either, but she found she didn't much care. Sons the world over would be lucky to grow up into a man like her husband, and damn anyone who said otherwise.
That's what Caleb says.
Clark said, defensive.
He takes the short bus, and that's why he smells weird.
Lord, but she couldn't remember the last time she'd been so angry. You go tell Pa to start up the truck, she said as she pulled on her boots, because I'm going to have myself a talk with Mrs. Brady, and you're going to have yourself a little play date.
What?
Clark was horrified.
I don't want to.
And I do not care, she said.
You can't make me.
Oh, you'd better believe I can, she said, and Clark went silent as he recognized the fire in his mother's eyes. I can, I will, and you will keep your fool mouth shut about what Caleb says if you know what's good for you. We're going over there. We're going to keep going over there till you two are best of friends.
You can't make me.
He mumbled again, and this time Martha was at his side, knelt down beside him, and took his face in her hands so that he'd look at her. His eyes were still such a beautiful blue through his glasses. She didn't think he'd even know what it meant. Even she didn't really know what it meant, but she pressed her forehead to his. I know I can't make you, she said, but I know my son. I know you like I know my own heart, baby, and I'm not going to have to make you. It's just what's going to happen. Now go tell Pa to bring the car around while I phone ahead, okay? Clark was sullen, but he went outside to find his father anyway. Martha shut her eyes and tried not to cry again. 2 months later, Mr. and Mrs. Kent were called to the school to pick up their son. He and Caleb had gotten into a fight at recess. Clark's glasses were broken. He had tissue paper in his nose. Jonathan spent 20 minutes giving the principal a lecture about bullies. Clark stared at his father with naked adoration. She didn't think she'd ever seen, utterly rapt and absorbing every word. She was so proud, she thought her heart would burst. There were never any boys lying dead in her yard, too young and too helpless. She had never cried for the sons she couldn't save. The last time people from the future showed up at Martha Kent's house, Clark Kent was 10 years old. Martha didn't remember things that had never happened. How could she? And yet, there was an awareness in her, born of meddling she did not know she'd done. Fractured futures and split timelines. She didn't know what she knew. She didn't know how she knew it, the ghost of a thought against the edges of her mind. Without thinking, without even entirely knowing what she was doing, she grabbed her shotgun and filled her pocket up with shells. The tractor was still running, but Jonathan wasn't on it. She headed for the barn where the door was ajar and held her gun at ready.
Sorry, I really don't understand what you're asking here.
Jonathan was saying.
Don't play dumb, Mr. Kent. Please, just direct me to Kal-El's vessel, and this will all be over soon.
The voice was wrong somehow. Not a human voice. Not an animal. Not anything she'd ever heard. Kal-El. The name made a pit in the bottom of her stomach.
Do you mean Clark?
Jonathan asked, and she could tell he was trying to buy time.
If it makes you feel better to call him that, then fine. Now, I hate to disappoint you, Fallon, but we got rid of that thing a long time ago. Now, if you want to go check out in the lake... Don't waste my time.
Jonathan screamed, which was all the encouragement Martha needed to burst in the door and start firing. Her husband, thank goodness, was already on the ground. No chance of friendly fire. She just had to hope whatever the thing hadn't killed him. It was definitely a thing, some slender, twisted thing, and only the vaguest approximation of a man, and the only advantage Martha really had was the element of surprise. She wasn't sure that it would be enough. When it kept moving, when it advanced towards her, reloading took too long, firing took too long, everything took too damn long. But finally it crumpled, and her ears were ringing, and her relief was so profound that she almost crumpled herself. More so when she saw Jonathan start to roll on his side so he could get up. But then he looked behind her, with what was obviously genuine alarm. So Martha turned as she reloaded, fired once before her gun grew too hot in her hand to hold. She dropped it and tried to shake her hand free of the heat, distantly aware that her gunfire had been completely useless. Son of a bitch!
Ma!
Oh, Ma, yourself! She said irritably, sizing up this apparently bulletproof threat. Except that he wasn't standing there like a threat. He was standing there like he was very concerned. And confused. Lord, those beautiful blue eyes. She stood straighter. Clark? What in the hell was he wearing? And who was his friend? And his other lady friend? What the hell were they wearing, for that matter? A bat? Demon? And a flag girl, maybe? This was a Halloween nightmare, was what it was.
Ma, what happened?
She put her fists on her hips, because the fact that her son had just appeared in her barn as a grown man in a ridiculous outfit did not excuse that tone. You'd know better than I would, she said, looking back towards the twisted metal on the ground. Donnie, do you know what the hell just happened? He was sitting up, wincing as he held his head.
Not a damn clue. Ma! Pa!
The older Clark sounded very scandalized. Martha smacked him straight in the middle of his chest with the back of her hand, and it felt like hitting a wall. Honestly, Clark, you're a grown man. I'm sure you've heard a bad word or two before. He started turning faintly pink. His lady friend covered her mouth, but the one in black remained expressionless. You are a grown man, aren't you? Not some kind of aged-up 10-year-old or something?
Yes, Ma, I am a grown man.
Well, would you go help your father, please? I'd do it myself, but as long as you're going to stand there showing off all those muscles, you might as well use them.
Ma?
Now there was that familiar whine. Nonetheless, he was at his father's side before Martha could even blink, air whooshing around him. Now, was that necessary? She asked. Nobody likes a show-off, Clark.
Yeah, Clark,
Murmured the man in black. Martha turned her head to look him over. She wondered if she imagined that he stood straighter. Is this just how people are going to dress in the future? She asked, gesturing to both her son's companions. Because I don't think I'm going to be able to pull that off. No, Mrs. Kent, the woman assured her. She couldn't place the accent. Lord, There was a time when she would kill to have a body like that, especially those arms. Oh, it just seemed exhausting. These are uniforms. Do you mind if I inspect the evidence? She asked, pointing to the mangled metal she'd been shooting at. You may as well, Martha said with a wave of her hand. What in the hell am I going to do with it? I'm assuming you're all from the future for some reason. Is that about right? That's correct, the woman said, kneeling beside it and picking at various parts. Presumably, she knew what she was doing.
You're taking this remarkably well.
The man in black observed. Martha arched an eyebrow, then gestured to her son. I found a baby in a spaceship. I've spent 10 years now hiding a space baby from the government, and you think that some kind of time foolishness is going to blow my mind? I was expecting aliens.
You were half right.
He had a very dry sense of humor for a man with pointy ears. Clark, are you going to introduce me to your coworkers? Jonathan seemed to be feeling better. Clark was still sitting by his side, and it made her so happy to see them together, even if it was still very weird.
Ma, Pa, this is Bruce and Diana. Bruce, Diana, these are my parents, who are apparently unbelievably reckless.
Excuse me?
Because if Brainiac hadn't been in such a weakened state already, he'd have killed you, Ma, and then where would we be?
Okay, I guess this is Martha. Dead, obviously. Why does the robot have a gender?
I was wondering that too, actually.
Jonathan said.
That's... Ma, you tried to shoot me. What if it had been someone else?
Buried him behind the barn, both Kent said at the same time. You shouldn't sneak up on a mother with a shotgun, she added, though she was still mortified that she'd shot at her own son. If you're here for the man-bot, why was the man-bot here? He was trying to get Kryptonian technology, Diana said, so that he could rebuild himself. He came from a time when Kala's ship was still intact, and therefore of the most use to him. Don't call him that. Diana raised an eyebrow. Kal-El? Right. My son is named Clark.
They can both be my name.
Clark said gently, standing back up. Lord, he got tall. Would get tall, someday. I named you Clark, she said.
We have a fight about it.
He said.
When I'm 17.
Oh, good. I'll know to look forward to that.
You won't remember.
Bruce said. No,
Time foolishness.
he said. Oh, hell. I should have known. Ain't that just a kick in the pants? Clark hugged her suddenly. It felt very strange being hugged by her son, her little boy, and he was bigger than she was. Still, it was very nice to know she'd raised a man who still hugged his mother. She'd done at least one thing right. You're not hugging me because I'm dead in the future, are you? She asked.
Ma! No, you're fine. I just saw you last week, and I come home for holidays.
You invited me last Christmas.
Bruce added helpfully. Is that what you wore?
Yes.
He said, and she didn't think she believed him.
But with the sweater over it.
Martha cackled, and she was pretty sure when Bruce coughed he did it to cover a smile.
You didn't have a shotgun then, though.
He said.
You baked cookies.
Did I really? Martha was impressed. She looked back to Clark and cupped his face in his hands like he was still small. I probably got real nice once I found out you were bulletproof. She beamed. I wish I could remember this, she said. I'm just so happy you lived.
Aw, Ma.
I'm serious. I spent 10 years now scared to death you were going to get stolen or vivisected or God knows what else. Every time you get the flu, I'm scared you're going to die because you're an alien. You still can't be outside without your glasses.
Oh, that gets better.
I see that, but I won't know that until when you're gone. For all I know, just being on this planet is killing you. I don't know what you'll be when you grow up. Martha looked at Diana. I spent 3 years convinced this kid was in some kind of larval stage. I was going to wake up one morning, I'd be a giant crab. Diana smiled, and Bruce cleared his throat unconvincingly.
She ain't kidding.
Jonathan said.
You wouldn't believe how many nights she had me go over the Our Son is a Crab action plan. Pa, you knew I wasn't gonna turn into a giant crab, right?
Jonathan finally managed to stand, and he grinned at his wife.
Kiddo, I spent the 80s recovering from the 70s. I would have believed it even if you hadn't come from space.
Clark rubbed at the bridge of his nose. Diana put her hand gently on his arm. She'd thrown the broken metal man over her shoulder. Clark, we need to leave soon, before the portal closes.
There's a portal? There usually is.
Bruce said.
I'm sorry, Ma, we have to go.
Oh, fine. Give me a hug first, then. And he did, without even complaining, and Martha was indescribably pleased. Diana, do I get to hug you too? Of course, Miss Kent. But I have also enjoyed your Christmas cookies. Oh, hell, she said as she hugged the taller woman. Clark was hugging his father in the meantime, and that made her even happier. I'm gonna have to learn how to make those, Bruce.
Technically, you won't remember whether or not I hugged you.
No, she agreed. But you'll have to live with knowing that you disappointed me, and I don't even remember it for you to make it up to me.
Ouch.
That was apparently enough to guilt him into hugging her, but secretly she thought he wanted to anyway, mostly because he hugged her much tighter than was strictly necessary.
Stay safe, Mrs. Kent.
You know I will, she pointed out.
Stay safe anyway.
She tried to remember. She really tried to remember. She tried to remember her son's face some far-off day in the future when he was safe and happy and she could embarrass him in front of his friends. She tried to remember the way he hugged her and how much taller he got, and how strong he looked, how he was bulletproof, how he came home at Christmas and he brought his friends, and she needed to learn how to actually make cookies instead of buying them from the co-op bakery. She forgot.
Why do I feel like I fell off the tractor?
Jonathan asked, rubbing at old scars through his shirt as they stood in the driveway. Martha looked at the tractor, still running. Johnny, I don't mean to alarm you, but I think you might have fallen off the tractor.
Well, shit.
She kissed his cheek. How about you go inside and rest? I'm sure Clark can help me finish whatever else needs to get done. He took her hands, lifted them so he could kiss each one of her fingertips.
What's got my favorite girl in such a good mood today?
She sighed, blushing like a schoolgirl. You know, she said, I have no goddamn idea.
God, it was fucking
I really
good.
like that. I really like that story.
It gets real cute at the
Aw.
end, because
It does get real cute at the end.
Clark's such a mama's boy.
He is.
He's
Oh my god.
allowed, and it's good. I like it.